Hello, podcast listener. How are you listening to this podcast? Because that's your personal preference, which is what we talk about today. This is your host with the most, JJ Gordon, the host of JJ Meets World, which is my personal preference to be the host and not the guest. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this long conversation Tucker and I have about those things that you go, I would have done it this way. And by the way, if you'd like to help support our podcast, visit jjmeetsworld.com where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some killer swag at our merch shop, or click the link to Apple Podcast and give us a 5-star review.
1, 2, 3, 4. JJ Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is. He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. JJ has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirled as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called JJ Meets World.
Personal preferences. That's what today's episode is going to be all about. Personal preferences. And I'll name a couple.
Yeah, what a narrow subject you've picked today, JJ.
Yeah, well, so this is what I was thinking about the other day. Is there are occasions where I feel like I know exactly what I want. And I realized recently that a lot of people make a personal preference and it's based off of just what they've always done rather than experience several different things and find out what they actually like themselves. Here's an example. When I fly, I choose an exit row, which now I pay handsomely for because they realize like, hey, people want to sit in the exit row. We should charge them more for that. But the reason is I get some more leg room and there's usually not as much packing and stacking like there is in other parts of the plane. So for me, the exit row is where the money's at. And I know that because I've been in the other rows and they've been horrendous trips.
Right.
Now, another personal preference of mine is I like cars that have variable speed windshield wipers. Follow me on this. My current vehicle only has 2 settings. Really short bursts and really long in between. And I think to myself, okay, car company, why couldn't you have given me 3 or 4 options where I need to
you're just saying you want some more fidelity of control.
Right. Because my personal preference will always be this. I want there to be a substantial amount of rain on the windshield before the wiper blade has to wipe and get called into action. And to me, the reason behind that is I don't want it going nonstop. I hate the sound of a wiper blade that weep, 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 weep.
I actually feel this very deeply because, on drives, when you're driving through the rain, the rain itself is not falling at like a uniform speed and, density. So like you're driving through different levels of rain, but if you're just using one wiper blade motion, it's never quite adequate to what you're dealing with in the moment. So you're saying, and I actually mean this, I'm ignorant to this, but there are cars that can sense how much they should be wiping.
Yep.
That really.
And to me, like that is the most amazing thing we can deal with right now in human technology. Here's another personal preference that might be a little more relatable to everybody. The pillow that you choose to use at night. Now, Tucker.
You're so right. Yeah.
Right. So I know you're in a weird spot because is it your goose down is what you're allergic to?
My understanding is that it's the down feather pillows can often have a lot of allergens in them. They trap a lot, and it's those particular allergens that I'm sensitive to. I believe that's how it works. As a kid, if I was ever trying to sleep on a feather pillow, my sinuses would clog up just immediately. I couldn't breathe. And we kind of figured out early on that I was sensitive to that. Since then, I've made it a rule just not to. And I don't know exactly how sensitive I am to it now, but I'm so used to not sleeping on down that even just the feeling of like knowing, like feeling the down that it's filled with, you can feel the fibers of it. It feels totally different than a polyester or cotton fill. Yeah, I just I don't use them.
What is your personal preference when it comes to the sturdiness, the firmness of your nighttime pillow?
Oh, that's a oof. It's really more or less like how my biggest complaint I can say with pillows when I'm traveling is that they're overstuffed.
Yep,
They're actually
agreed.
too big. So they're making your head tilt up at too high of an angle. When really, at least my understanding of this is that the best position for your neck to be in at night is overall is you on your back with your head in as much of a straight line with the rest of your body as you can, supported with your neck and head by some kind of a pillow, so you're at least comfortable. But I'm also someone who more often than not is a side or stomach sleeper.
Yep.
And I sleep with a bunch of pillows, but there's like one pillow that's typically the one that my head itself is on. Everything else is like a pillow between the legs if I'm sleeping on my side or whatever.
I'm a person who I like a 3-pillow situation when I go to bed. I like a firmer pillow to give a little bit of height, and then a medium pillow, but it's got to be something where my head can kind of like where my head doesn't dictate the shape of the pillow, like based on how I go, like move around. Does that make sense?
No,
Like it's got to retain its shape.
It makes perfect sense. I mean, we're talking about variable pillow shapes. I also have a configuration of 3 that I typically work with.
And then I need a third pillow that I put between my legs.
Every night is different. You've had a different day. So how your body wants to like rest on your bed at that moment is going to be different. So if you have a bunch of pillows can kind of help reshape the terrain of your bed.
It's sort of like a battlefield.
Yeah. It's sort of like you're playing chess with sleep, and you're trying to defeat sleep, and you've got to get the pawns into the right place, and those are the pillows.
When we're talking about sleep, personal preference comes in a lot. So yeah. I'm also a guy that it doesn't matter if it's the dead of winter. I need the air moving around, and so I will turn the fan on.
I'm the same.
Do you have?
I need to feel. I like feeling at the very least a very slight breeze. Yeah. I also like the white noise produced by a fan.
Why have we not figured out a way so that like I like the cold side of the pillow too. Like I like my face and ear to be resting against the cool side. Have we not figured out a way that you could like USB plug in and have like a small battery that doesn't feel like it's hard to create like a cooling sensation?
Oh, I bet that technology exists. I haven't dove into it.
I haven't been into a sharper image in a while, so maybe it does exist.
I'm still sleeping. I'm sleeping on a foam mattress I bought off of JeffBezos.com. And so that's just been working fine for me. In fact, when I moved to a memory foam mattress, a lot of my back problems went away. So I guess I need something that's more like this. But I also, no matter what, when I'm sleeping, I always run hot. So I need to have some sort of cooling on me. And it's that, what is it about that space between, you want the room to be just cool enough so that you're going to want to get under the blankets so that the blanket can then be the thing that warms you up, and then achieving that temperature homeostasis that you're looking for under the blanket. What is it about that that's so amazing, JJ?
That is an excellent question, but maybe it's because we like to have control over things in our lives, and that's one of those aspects we can take control of. Here's another thing. I am always going to be someone who wants it colder in the room because I can layer on with more blankets, but I can only get so naked.
Yeah,
if it is above 75 degrees in the place I'm trying to sleep, I am miserable.
Very Absolutely. Good point.
And I swear to God, every time that happens, there's also sand in the bed. I don't know what it is or what's going on. Maybe it's only when I'm near beaches, but it's got to be scratchy and it's hot. I hate it.
Our frequent podcast guest, Mike Resel, has a really weird sleeping arrangement. Are you aware of what his sleeping preferences are?
Please tell me.
He does not like sleeping on mattresses. Michael sleeps on the floor, just on the floor. He puts a blanket down on the floor and then lays on that and puts another blanket on him and has a pillow, one pillow, and that's where he sleeps. That's what he likes to do. And if you ask him, Michael, why do you do that? He says, if that's how you sleep, then the world is your bed.
Oh my.
Right. So like he can just, and ever since I've first known him in junior high school, he could sleep wherever. He really could. He's someone who could sleep on a rock underwater if he wanted to, which I am not that at all. I can pretty much only sleep in a bed and only sleep really well in my own bed.
Would you please tell the story of when you lived with Mike and he and Ree went to that Chinese buffet and had that special setup so that they could continue enjoying it later on?
Yep. So you've got your facts a little twisted.
Okay.
Yes, Ree and Rezel enjoyed the fruits of that endeavor, but that was actually perpetuated by me and our friend Rachel Hoffman.
Right.
Yeah. And so what we did was we went to, I think the statute of limitations is up around at this point. We were teenagers still technically at this point. So like, don't arrest us. Well, we went to a local.
Okay, hold on. First, before we get into this, this is not an arrestable offense by any means whatsoever.
I'm just covering my bases.
In fact, like,
I don't.
Are you worried that, like, I mean, if anything, the health department might go after you, but that would be slim picking.
That's a really good point. I just also think that what we did wasn't what they had in mind, and that there would be, because to them, if that's what people are doing, they're really gonna start losing money because we took. So basically, this is what we did. We went and paid. We each bought a buffet at this Chinese food buffet. But we had backpacks with us that we had lined with grocery bags. And we'd put food in it. And the food just became this giant mix. Neither her or I really thought we were going to be eating this. We just thought this was a good idea for some reason. And we brought backpacks filled with this sort of Chinese food medley back to the apartment that I was sharing with Ree at the time, and just basically handed them to Ree, who divided it all up into Tupperware, and then Ree and Rezel ended up eating that food over the next couple of days.
Yeah, so
I think it's story.
I think it's genius because I'm of the opinion that when you go to a Chinese buffet, all the food touches on the plate anyway. So why not make a hillock like structure? So it seems genius to me that you would have done this. Again, the fact that you're worried about the statute of limitations on this, you're fine. You don't worry. You're good to go. You don't have to read the century code. There's nothing in the century code about lining a backpack and taking buffet items home.
Travis Paper carved a deep groove in my psyche,
of your worry.
No, fuck him.
So to go even further with this, I think it's genius, and I also want to just throw out there. Listen, even if both of you filled a backpack full of food and left, they're doing just fine. That's how cheaply made the food is at a buffet. And don't get me wrong, I love a buffet. I really love a buffet.
Right, but we weren't really coming out ahead monetarily in any real way, shape, or form. I mean, we probably both gathered, 2 more buffets each, I guess. But in the long run, that's just nothing. It's like, if we had put that much effort into like an hour of honest labor, we could have probably made the same amount of money.
Right. Well, and I also think too that if you wanted to save money, let's say one of you would have gone and ate by themselves and then brought food home for the rest. Right. That's how you would have saved it. But what happened in your stomachs later on is truly the price that you ultimately paid, because we all know that Chinese buffet does not always sit well, especially as it gets older and older and older.
Yeah.
Do you okay? So when you go to a Chinese buffet, what's your personal preference on like this is what makes a good Chinese food buffet?
Well, I'm always looking for like the citrusy chickens.
Okay, so your Hawaiian chicken, your pineapple chicken.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's true. Not just citrus, but sweet. Yeah. So
An
any
orange
sort
chicken.
of orange chicken is my jam. Lemon chicken is great if you can find it.
Gross.
Oh, it's so good. If it's made, but they're all basically just fried chicken, nuggets with or buffalo wings, boneless wings with different sauces on them. I'm also looking for I think it's referred to as snow shrimp, where it's sort of shrimp that's been fried in this kind of light crust, and then it's been sitting in like this kind of honey sauce or sort of a sweet sauce. If they've got that, I'm always all about that. If they've got lo mein that's like a thick gauge lo mein, I'm interested in that. Man, I could go. Oh, now I'm hungry, JJ, and all I've had today was a donut I shouldn't have eaten.
Oh, and you just said yesterday
coffee.
that you eat too many donuts. I noticed that.
We had a potluck for Theater B, and I brought donuts, and no one ate them. So I just have this full container of donuts, which will be stale in like another day. And so, yeah, it's just me. I'm not giving them to my cats.
So here's my big problem. So when I go to a Chinese buffet, I judge it pretty harshly on the cream cheese wontons.
Okay.
And I feel like this is the problem. There is no Chinese buffet where we live, Tucker, that hits all the notes. That like everything here is perfect. One place might have amazing Hawaiian chicken, but then almond cream wontons instead of just straight up cream cheese.
You don't like the almond cream wontons at Snapdragon?
I do not. In fact, that's the specific one. I love everything at Snapdragon but their almond cream wontons.
I'm fine with naming places that I didn't steal from as a teenager.
Okay, so that was not the place. Okay, we'll keep guessing throughout the show. And then to me, like, there's just all these little things that make it worthwhile. I also want a place that's I love how the international like rules for a Chinese buffet is it has to have fountain soda, but they kind of have a little bit of whatever whatever. So like you might go to one and it's like, ooh, look, I believe that's Powerade on the spigot today. Well, here's back the next time and it's something like Orange Crush.
Here's something I'm always looking for, but I judge all buffets by this. I mean, not just Chinese food buffets. I mean, really, I think my rules for buffets in general apply to Chinese food buffets, pizza buffets, whatever. Is that if the ice cream is actual ice cream or if it's a malt, if it's a malt, I don't want it. But if it's actual ice cream and it's soft serve, and you can make your own soft serve twist, that is my thing. So if it has that and I can finish my meal with that, especially if they've got like a good pastry section. So if you go to, now obviously I'm talking buffet levels that are in like casino resorts, places like that, where they really try to razzle dazzle you with a couple of options.
Yep.
If you can get either a freshly made and laid out piece of either pumpkin pie or apple pie or something, and then you can put some soft serve ice cream that wasn't just made with a malt on top of that, dude, you will be happy for the rest of the day.
This is a true story. There used to be a an all foods buffet called the Royal Fork in Fargo on 13th Avenue. And it was a very famous chain of buffet restaurants. Great chicken, I remember. And I went there with some friends when we were like 17, and they had a waffle station. You can make waffles all day long. And I'm like, sweet. And so I made a waffle, and a woman goes, you know what's really good? And I said, what? And she grabbed my plate like took my plate away from me, walked it over to the ice cream machine, and put a big dollop of soft serve ice cream right on the middle of the waffle. And here's the deal. She's not wrong, but don't be taking my plate.
Yeah, I mean that is definitely an invasion of your privacy, but also it just kind of worked out.
You think so? Because I mean, to me, like I'm still like I will hold my plate with both hands now. No one's taking it from me. It's mine. It's mine,
Sure.
I tell you.
I would say, because I've done the waffle thing too. I love waffles and syrup and ice cream. I think do actually work well together. But I think with waffles and ice cream, I prefer it to not be soft serve. Like I like a harder ice cream to sit on top of it if the waffle is freshly made, so that the heat from the waffle can kind of go up into the ice cream and slow my consumption of it. Because soft serve ice cream, I'm gonna get ice cream headaches real fast all the time because I just like slurp it down
because you consume it so fast. It's practically a drink.
I'm 36 and I still cannot. I don't have the self-control to just slow down with ice cream. I don't have it. I feel silly, but I don't have it.
Well, that's fine. It's human evolution that we're dealing with.
I don't think it's fine, JJ. This is not this is not like a trait that I've evolved for my survival.
But I mean, it brings you enough pleasure that you can deal with the pain that you go back, right?
Right. But maybe I do have the mentality of, say, like a giraffe on the savannah, where it's like, if you find some water, you drink as fast as you can because you're in a weak position from predators while you're consuming it. And so maybe that's what I'm doing evolutionarily. I'm like, oh, I've got this beautiful ice cream reservoir, but I have to consume it fast because while I'm eating it, I'm vulnerable to attack.
I think I mean, if anything, I would think that the attack would be diabetes. You don't need to fear another like carnivore or a predator. You need to fear the blood sugar alignment in your body.
Yeah.
Sure. Throw it out there. Okay. Another personal preference that I have is, and maybe this is sort of an unwritten rule more than a personal preference, but whoever is driving in a car is the person who should dictate what's playing on the speakers.
That should be written in the Constitution. I agree with that.
Yeah. And, to me, it's like, I also, I take into account who's with me. So if I'm going to be driving across the state with the line benders, I won't force them to listen to the original Broadway cast recording of of Carousel or something.
Well, then why do you do it to your good buddy Tucker?
Now, those are only on super long road trips. And I think that there's a difference there where if we're spending more than 5 hours in a car, you need to broaden your horizons and realize that like it's going to be a little of this, a little of that.
But it's at the same time, it's a fair trade. I shouldn't complain. It is a fair trade because on those long trips, if you're the one who's doing the driving at that moment, I'm conserving energy.
Right. Correct. I also think that there's a certain amount of I have to stay alert and awake. And if I have to concentrate on drowning out whatever kind of crap music someone else has chosen, I'm not really giving my full focus to the road. That's just the way it is. Another personal preference that I find that deals with cars is how the sunroof is positioned. If you happen to, first of all, what's the difference between a moonroof and a sunroof? Is there a difference?
I don't know. I don't think so.
I see some people say like, oh, it's the moonroof, and then other people say it's the sunroof. I'm like, it's the sky roof, if anything.
I think it depends on which like druidic coven you subscribe to.
Oh, that's what it is.
And which celestial being you worship. The control of my sunroof really pisses me off when it comes to Mike Resel again. I'm going to bring him up because he and I have lunch at least once a week, and we both have vehicles with sunroofs, and I'm a baldman, right? And so I don't like to have the sun on my head. And so I keep mine closed. He is not a baldman. He is a hairman, and he likes the sun and likes being under the sun and is a child of the sun. And so he always wants to have his open. When he's driving, I don't futz with his sunroof. It's not my car. when I'm driving, he just helps himself to my sunroof. He just opens it up every flipping time, and I'll close it and he'll open it again. And then I'm like, God damn, this dominance play is really pissing me off. So now I have to wear baseball caps all the time.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Right?
So his personal preference can intrude upon you in that case then, right?
Yes. But I'm gonna have the last laugh somehow.
This is another weird personal preference. I like Linksys brand routers. I've tried one other brand in my life and I didn't care for it. And maybe it's because I'm brand loyal to the Linksys brand, but that's the one I constantly go back to over and over and over again. Even when it's time to upgrade, I like their interface. And I think people sometimes get stuck in a technology chain like that. Like, for example, Tucker, when you and I were in middle school and early high school, and somebody was going to buy a computer in our area, I would say that 3 times out of 5, they bought a Gateway computer.
Yeah.
Assembled in South Dakota, shipped to you in a giant box that looks like a cow. And it was insanely huge for people to get that. Well, when Gateway closed up, all of a sudden people are like, oh no, where am I going to get a computer? Oh, literally anywhere that sells electronics.
Yeah.
Did you ever have a Gateway PC by any chance?
We did. I think we had several from time to time. I even remember going to the Gateway store, like when they had a lobby you could walk through and look at the different computers and just being amazed. But, personal computers was still a really, really, really new technology in general. So like in the same way you hear people talk about like your grandparents might talk about when the family finally got a television, right? As everyone was getting televisions, you and I are from a generation where you remember when your family first got a computer or when computers themselves were just kind of getting into people's homes. And so it was a huge novelty. So before you ever had the Mac store to walk through, you had the Gateway store. And yeah, for some reason, cow print. They thought, yep, let's lean into this. And I don't know. It made them stand out, I guess. I guess that was the whole point.
I'm actually using a Gateway monitor still to this day.
Really?
Yeah. It's sitting right in front of me and it works just fine.
Really? You're using like a cathode ray tube Gateway monitor, or is it a flat screen?
It's a flat. And I remember paying handsomely for this flat screen back in the day.
Okay.
In fact, so when I was 18, my mom said, okay, what do you want for your birthday? And I said, I'd really love to build my own computer, like I'd like to choose the specs and do that. And she goes, oh, that's pretty expensive. And I said, well, what if we comboed it like this? It's my birthday, it's my Christmas, and it'll be my graduation present. And she was like, wow. You're positive you're going to graduate? And I said, yeah, I'm pretty confident in that happening. And so she agreed to it. And so she took me to the Gateway store and I built a PC. Now, in early 2001, when
that's a good trade, by the way.
It is a good trade, right? Like it was an excellent trade because also like it was expensive. It was soups expensive at that time.
It was expensive, but you understood too what that was getting you.
Right. Because, you can go and buy a computer off the shelf and it'll serve you just fine. But if you buy a computer that is like laid out for the specs and the things that you're going to be doing with it, it makes a huge difference. So things I did with this is I upgraded the video card to like the best possible video card you could get. I put a pretty substantial hard drive in there because I knew I would need that. It had dual disc drives, one that could burn what they wasn't even called Blu-ray at the time. It was called like a double standard DVD or something like that.
There were dual layer DVDs, so you could basically get twice the amount of information onto a DVD.
Right. And so I'm burning that. Plus it had the fastest burn drive on there as possible because we all know what it was like when you had to burn a CD and you only had like a 1 or 2 times burn rate. Those were long afternoons waiting to make sure that your computer didn't go to sleep and it would stop working. So I had like I think it was like a 64 times burn rate and I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Now, the big mistake I put on there, because I thought this is the height of technology, nothing will ever be better than this, is I put a zip drive in there. Do you remember zip disks?
I never used them, but they were basically just a form of compression, right?
Right. Yeah. And, essentially, we all had floppy disks that could have like 5
Yeah.
megabytes of information, but
Yeah.
this could have up to like 70 or 80 megabytes of information. So you could save a lot onto a zip disk. And I thought, this is the next big format, right? This is how people take things from point A to point B, and it's going to be a small miracle. Well, that was total and complete crap, because the price of CDRs dropped and people just started burning stuff to CDRs, and then you could throw it away afterwards if you didn't want. So the zip drive that I had on there was practically worthless for a long time, with the exception of I was pretty diligent about backing up papers and stuff that I wrote, because in my mind, I always thought, well, if I wait 4 years, I could probably start selling these back to high school kids if I got a good grade on it. I never ended up doing that because, like I said, zip drive technology really went the way of the glaciers. So,
well, you know what? So actually, before we go too far away from this topic, this has actually been kind of an interesting thing as I've been looking into this recently, because I've been collecting DVDs and Blu-rays from like thrift shops and pawn shops and stuff of things I'd like to have a copy of. And I don't want to pay full quality. I don't want to pay full retail price for these things, right? I only want to pay like $1 or $2 at the most per thing. Anyways, I've been picking up the episodes of Seinfeld that are on DVD. And I thought, has this ever been released on Blu-ray? And it hasn't. And then as I was looking into it, I believe it's Netflix has acquired the rights to streaming Seinfeld. And so they are making like a 4K remastered print from the original 35 mil. And it'll be available on their streaming platform at some point. And I realized, you know what? I bet that's never, ever released on a physical format like that. I bet that's only ever you can pay for access to it on a streaming platform, but that they never actually offer it as like a physical offering.
You think so?
That might, I wouldn't be surprised if it is, because if they have this very particular version of the product, which is this really high quality remaster of it, and they can kind of control. They want to control. They may just not make as much off of the physical sale off of it anymore. I don't know. I have no idea. But it made me think that could be possible. And I think there are other shows that were in a similar boat. I have to look into it now. But ones that were getting an HD remastered treatment for streaming, but there was no word on them ever actually being released on physical media.
So you could take something like there's a movie, just an awful movie called Dr. Detroit that is one of Dan Aykroyd's early movies that for a long time was only available like on VHS tape. But even that, it was like a single printing, from the year after it came out from theaters. Right. And so unless you found it on HBO, where HBO had an HD version, because their deal with the theaters or with the production companies at some point must have included like upgrading the quality as time went on. So for a long time, if you wanted to watch an HD version of something, you'd have to watch it on like an AMC or an HBO, right. Because it hadn't been released to the consumers in that high def of a version. Also, I'm also amazed at when a movie is released and you only can see certain scenes if you catch it on television. For example, there's an extended like kickball sequence, I think, in Billy Madison that you don't get to see unless you see it on television, but it's because they have to cut something else out and they still wanted the runtime to be, like 85 minutes.
I think that's really fascinating because I have a memory of seeing like a network airing of Happy Gilmore. And at one point in the movie, he's sponsored by Subway. And so his character is wearing a shirt that has the Subway logo across it. And in the same scene, there were shots where Subway had been completely censored out with just they'd filled it in with a brown background bar. And then in other shots, the Subway logo was still there. So there were ones that they had covered up and other ones that they had let go. And I wondered like if there was some sort of contractual dispute where Subway was only owed so much time of on there, and so they literally stripped them from any other shot, including ruining the continuity of the shot. Because of that. I don't know, but I'm fascinated by that. I'm fascinated by the notion of multiple cuts, multiple versions of things. Like I think if it's Northern Exposure, the show, I believe the version that was released on DVD has a different soundtrack than what aired in a lot of episodes.
Correct.
Because they had the
I was gonna say the same thing with Scrubs too, where they didn't have the music rights. I mean, that's not something you put in a contract.
At that time, it wasn't, at least. Yeah.
There's a gray area around things that came out like in the late '90s and early 2000s, where it's like, oh, well, I'd love to watch this again, but something seems off about it, and it's usually that the music has.
JJ, can we pause real quick? I need a pee.
Yeah.
All right, 1 second. I'm sorry. Okay, sorry about that.
Okay, that's all right.
Alrighty, my pee is gone. You go.
The personal preference idea shouldn't be something where you think I'm right and you're wrong. It should be something where you say, listen, I have done enough personal research over the years that I now have something that I want. I like the temperature in the house at this. I like I like my cereal to be in this drawer because I access it more often than I do the Wheat Thins. It's just the little things, and I've noticed that my wife and I have different personal preferences. So, for example, here's a personal preference of mine. When I'm going to do the dishes, I like to take a tall glass or like a pot or something like that and put water in it with some soap and then put the utensils in there to soak.
That's a good idea.
Right?
Yep.
That drives Jill nuts.
Why? That's a good idea.
Right? She hates it. In fact, she hates it so much that one time I did it before I went to bed at night, and I heard her the next morning, and I heard her be like, I can't believe this. And then I heard her throw like the knives and forks and spoons and spatulas like across the sink. And I thought to myself, oh boy, she's having a temper tantrum today. Gonna avoid that. And then I called her out on it later, and she said that she didn't do it. And I said, yes, you did. And she goes, well, it was really early in the morning, so how could I remember? Like
you forgot.
Yeah.
I was in a fugue. I don't remember anything that happens the first hour after I wake up.
So to me, like, personal preferences are something I think that are important to people because it's the quirks. You know, I mean, you could call a personal preference a quirk when it comes down to it. I've got a quirk in where I like to put hamburgers versus hot dogs on the grill. I feel like it changes the way that they cook. And so I've got a very specific method. I'm going to go hamburger and then a hot dog and then a hamburger and then a hot dog in ascending order coming straight down.
Okay.
Off direct heat. And I feel like because a hot dog is fully cooked, And really, you're just warming it up to a palatable temperature.
Got
and
it.
the
Okay.
burger has to be cooked. You don't want burger next to burger. You want something in between to kind of be a buffer zone.
What is the buffer zone ensuring?
Nothing. Just the way I like to cook it. That's the whole point of a personal preference.
I'm sorry. I mean, I'm not saying you're doing it wrong. Far from it. I am not someone who should ever judge someone's grilling. I have no business judging grilling. I just thought you were about to reveal like a truth about cooking that would be a useful tip to take with me as I learn about grilling. But it turns out, no, this is merely an aesthetic choice you make.
It could possibly be argued that if you get a flare up from like some of the burger grease, this way it'll only affect one burger and part of a hot dog versus two burgers becoming flame licked because of it. So, but that's not why I do it. I'm really in control of the grill when I'm standing there. So,
but clearly a hot dog and a hamburger patty have different finish times, right?
Yeah, well, but they don't though, because you get a hot dog up to, like I said, like a warm temperature. It's already pre-cooked. You could leave a hot dog on a grill for hours as long as it's not being like over direct heat so that it'll burn.
Okay.
Versus like a burger will at one point become overdone. And so you have to master that. Now, a bratwurst, that's a whole different situation. We're not even getting into that today. But
oh, man.
That's my personal preference. I'm also a guy who uses tongs versus like a fork or a spatula.
That makes sense.
I'm a tongs guy, and I've got great tongs that have this like silicone edging on them so that they can take the high heat. Really, it took me a lot of years to figure out what is my tong preference, and now I've got it.
I think that makes sense over a grill because you're dealing with a grate. But what about if you were dealing with a spatula?
Like if I'm like using a spatula for something?
I'm sorry, not a spatula. I'm
like a pan, like a cast iron pan.
A frying pan. Yeah,
I'm still going to use that silicone spatula or that silicone tong.
Got it.
So as long as I can turn it with the tong, which most things you can. So like if I'm dealing with pasta, I'm going to use that silicone. I just like it. It cleans easily. It takes the high heat. You can do a lot with it. I think that there's a time and a place for a spatula. For example, if I'm flipping a pancake, gotta have my spatula. Gotta have it. Have you ever melted anything on the stove by accident? Like you put a piece of plastic somewhere and it.
Yep. I've done that. Yep.
Yeah,
Just been careless with it. Yeah, that sucks. But I've also, I've never had an apartment that had a really nice oven. It's always been like really, kind of bent up coil ovens that are real crap. So I've always just not had a good relationship with ovens in general, except for making pizzas.
I've got a great pizza story. My buddy Hacky, who my sister thought was Pockets. She's like, what's your buddy's name? Pockets? And I'm like, I wish I had an orphan friend who, grifts on the street and his name was Pockets.
Yeah, and he leads the Buttercream Gang.
Right. Obviously, you had to watch that one day too while locked in from being able to go outside during a rainstorm at school.
Actually, that was recently a tape I came across in my journey through buying VHS tapes, but that's a whole other thing.
Have you ever seen the Buttercream Gang?
I actually haven't, and I didn't pick it up, but when I saw it, it made me go, JJ has seen this.
Yeah.
I knew that you'd seen it.
Yeah, it's about a gang of kids in this small town who do good deeds and are really nice and awesome. The opposite of what you'd think of a regular gang. And then their leader, Paul, has to go live in the city. And he goes to the city and the city changes him. And it makes him a bad kid, and he starts stealing and smoking. And it's up to the Buttercream Gang to teach him, like, listen, life is about serving other people. And he comes back with a total like greaser haircut and everything too.
Oh, it's up to the Buttercream Gang.
Yeah,
I love that. It's up to the Babysitters Club. I love those names. Wasn't Don Knotts in some sort of movie with gang in the title?
Yeah, he's in the Apple Dumpling Gang.
Apple Dumpling Gang.
And in the Apple Dumpling Gang Rides Again with Tim Conway. Phenomenal movie. Hilarious movie.
Do you think they need to bring that back?
No, because nobody could do it as well as Don Knotts, and I don't know who you get to play those parts.
Steve Buscemi.
Nope, he couldn't do it because at one point it'd become creepy. It'd be weird. He'd be like, "All right, kids, I found abandoned in a mine." You know what does need to get turned into like a live action movie is the Boxcar Children.
I had one of those books, but I don't remember really any of the setup except didn't they get adopted by like a millionaire or something?
Yeah, well, so here's what happens in the very first book, spoiler, of the Boxcar Children. These children are orphans and they run away from their orphanage and they find an abandoned boxcar like out in the woods. And so they live in it and then they get a job picking cherries for this millionaire. And at the end of the book, the millionaire realizes like, hey, your parents were my children. You're my grandchildren. And then
How many kids are we talking about?
like 5, I think.
Goodness.
There's an older boy and an older girl, and then I think a series of other ones. And you would think that they'd all have special skill sets, right? Like,
right.
You know, one of the boys would be really good at solving like puzzles, or could read hieroglyphics or something. But no,
really just
they all have the same
bunch of kids that live in a boxcar.
Right. And then they went on these fabulous trips with their very rich grandfather, or maybe it was their uncle. No, I think it was their grandfather. Pretty sure it's the grandfather. But then you have to think like, well, why did the children abandon their, very rich father to begin with?
I want to know how he was able to establish the paternity.
I think he looked at one of them. And then and that was it. He's like, say.
My book series was Encyclopedia Brown. And that's what I was always reading.
And also, if you're a super rich old man, why are you hiring a couple of children to come and like pick cherries on your estate? That's what seemed like, there was something nefarious. And thank God he found out that they turned out to be his grandchildren, because was he planning on like capturing these children?
Right. I mean, I think like pretty much all adventure stories that star children are pretty unrealistic.
You think so?
I think so. I mean, one of my favorite books of all time, A Wrinkle in Time. There's no way that those kids would be that brave. I wouldn't be. Maybe I'm a bad example.
You're a horrible example.
I'm a terrible example.
Yeah, you never take adventure when it's offered to you. You're always like, whoa, okay, I'm going to enjoy this couch for a little bit.
Pretty much.
So the last personal preference, and the one that I think is probably the deepest, is directions. So how you get from point A to point B and your personal preference for that. So whether it's by mode of transportation, because I know people who just hate to fly. They do not want to fly. They would much rather drive. I feel like your dad has told me that before, that he's like, I don't like flying. I don't like waiting around an airport. I just don't care for it. I'd rather drive. And that way I can, move at my own pace and stop when I want to stop.
I think it's for me, it's conditional. It really just kind of depends on a lot of different factors. But I've flown so much that I'm kind of down with driving. Well, the thing I want to do is try a train. I haven't done that yet.
Yeah, you want to get on a train? I'll get you on a train.
Find some sort of a scenic, just beautiful, kind of relaxing, slow train ride for like if I had some kind of like a sleeping car or something, that'd be cool.
Remember, well, you wouldn't remember this, but people used to travel by boat all the time. That was a big thing. Like, you'd get on these river barges, these paddle boats, and you'd ride down the Great Mississippi and end in New Orleans. That's a method of travel I've always wanted to take. And they do river cruises in like in Africa and in Europe that sound amazing, because it's not a gigantic cruise ship, it's something smaller.
Right.
And there's probably only like 40 guests versus 4,000. And that sounds like it would be amazing to me as a method of travel. Now, I've never traveled by boat other than a cruise, which really isn't traveling. It's more like a ride, because it's like, listen, you're going to get off and get on at the exact same spot. Hooray!
I refuse to go on one of those major cruises ever.
Why?
Like, if I meet the love of my life and we get married and have a bunch of beautiful children, and then one day she says to me, honey, let's go on a cruise, I'm calling a divorce lawyer. Like right then, I'm like, I don't love you anymore. We're not doing that.
Oh, wow.
Because it sounds like the worst nightmare I've ever heard of. Just being on this like large ship with a bunch of Walmart people and just being like crammed in. It just sounds miserable to me. And I've heard so many horror stories about cruise ship travel that I just go, you know what? I think I'm going to pass on that.
Interesting. Okay, well,
Yeah.
I've been on cruises that I think were just great, just awesome. And maybe it's because I went once with a big group of people, and then I went a second time, and it was just Jill and I, and that was fun. I do know that there are definite horror stories from cruises. Like, if I was one of those people who got stuck on that cruise ship that died out in the middle of the ocean and had to be tugboated in, and you're pooping in buckets on the Lido deck.
Fuck.
And then, like, what you get home, and then they're like, "Sorry about that, but we're gonna give you a coupon for a free cruise."
Right, but then there's also like just the notion of you just get a shitty group of people on that particular cruise ship, and like if like fights break out and stuff, you're at sea. You know, there's not a whole lot there that's going to stop it.
Yeah,
so
but
there's
you could be. There aren't giant riots that take place. At worst, your cousin Teddy gets thrown in the brig for the night. You know,
is there a brig?
Oh yeah, there's definitely a brig. Because also, when I was last on a Carnival cruise, I was talking to one of the employees, and I asked about sea madness. And they said, "Yep, it happens." And so what they'll do is
sea madness.
Yeah, like if someone goes just nutty because they're on this thing, they'll lock them in this room, and then the next port they just kick you off, and that's it.
Excuse me. Yeah, sir. Me over here. What do you know about sea madness?
Oh, I know that it's a true factor that all men must face, the quiet depths of the sea. So, okay. I also think that part of personal preference with traveling is how you get to the destination. So, here is an example. I live between two different roads that both can get me to the same spot. We're going to use this spot as McDonald's, okay? Now, I can get on a 6-lane major thoroughfare in our town and get to this McDonald's, or I can take residential streets with a small underpass under the interstate that goes by a golf course, it goes by a cemetery, and plucks me out that same spot at this McDonald's. Now, I've timed these both, and it's a difference of about 2.5 to 3 minutes. Okay. Because a major thoroughfare has things like traffic lights where I could get caught on traffic lights. It also has more traffic. So if I'm trying to cross a lane of traffic to take a turn, that's a whole thing.
Gotcha.
And to me, 9 times out of 10, I will take that back way that goes by the cemetery and goes by the golf course.
Sure.
And even though it's slightly slower, I just like the look. And I think my parents started taking that too. When I go to my in-laws, you can take what we call Old 81, which was the highway that existed, or you can take the interstate. They run completely perpendicular to each other, or parallel, excuse me. They run parallel to each other. And one will get you there just slightly faster because you have to slow down if you take Old 81.
Okay.
But to me, I prefer to take the interstate for some reason. You know, maybe it's because there's more traffic on it, and if I have an incident, someone will find me. But it is definitely a little more dangerous than taking the highway. And I do like it's so weird because my personal preference comes in on a lot of these. When I give someone directions, like when I lived in Chicago and someone would be coming into town, I would give them what I feel is my personal preference when it comes to the directions on how to get to my house. MapQuest, they might say something completely different. The guy at the gas station you stopped to before you got into downtown Chicago, he might have a completely different idea. But I give you my personal preference, and I think some people just like that. For example, Tucker, do you ever take any routes that take you by any of your old houses?
Not routinely, but I do have some favorite spots to cruise through when I'm feeling nostalgia and I want to go on a mental trip, but not in my daily routine, because most of my travel right now takes me between my place out here in West Fargo to downtown Fargo where I work, or to downtown, or not, North Moorhead where Theater B has its place. So I'm doing a lot of interstate travel at this time.
Do you take the same exact route every time you go to Theater B?
The interstate I do, just because it's so far away from where I'm at that it just takes forever to not take that way. But oftentimes if I'm going to work in the morning and I don't have to be there at a certain time, then I just take 32nd Avenue and take my time. So, because then it's like some nice thinking time, like thinking about what I'll be working on that day and kind of prepping myself for it. And then I'm not in a rush. I'm not driving at 65 miles an hour, 55 miles an hour, or whatever, and a bunch of cars are zipping by me. I'm driving at a slower pace and the traffic's not as bad.
To me, I love to, so when I go to work, I drive by an old house that I used to live in. And it's a perfect route because from that old house to my job, which I lived at that place when I worked at that job, I know the perfect route from there. So all I did was just pick up and add a couple extra blocks to go past this thing on the way. And it's because I've chosen my personal preference. Now there's 8 different variations on how to get from point A to point B, from my house to my work. But I find that this way is the path that I enjoy the most. And maybe it's because I think it's a little faster, maybe it's a little more scenic, but it is my personal preference. And so when I get in a car with someone and they're taking me on that similar route, I think to myself, well, this is a weird way you're going. Why are you taking this street? Why are you doing this? Well, it's because that's their personal preference. And if we could all just kind of be better about accepting other people's personal preferences, especially when we're doing something passive like being a passenger.
Well, you know how like when you were a kid and you were playing video games with a buddy and it was your friend's turn to play like the one-player game, and so you're used to the controls as well and you're watching the screen, but because you have no control over what's happening on the screen, your hands are kind of twitching as like you're thinking about what buttons you would be pressing and your timing is different. It just gets kind of frustrating. It can be similar if you're not used to it, if you're driving all the time and then you're a passenger suddenly.
Yeah, video games are much different for us back in the day. Where
well, I mean, I've been
go.
I've been slowly but surely putting back together my my vintage gaming setup, and I think I'm going to be doing kind of a deep dive into some Sega Genesis games here pretty soon.
Oh yeah, I'm a little Toe Jam and Earl maybe.
Well, I always gotta every year at least once I have to play through Sonic 2. It's my favorite Sega game of all time. I got to play through it. But then after that, I've got Comic Zone, which is a really difficult game, and I want to try to beat that game. I don't know. We'll see what else I jump into. There's some really, really hard games, like the original X-Men game on Sega Genesis. Oof, never understood that game, so we'll see.
I'm a big fan of when it was somebody else's turn to play, to hand over the controller, and then if they died right away, to say like, we'll just go, you go again.
Right.
Because to me, that was like one of the first times I learned sharing and learned like the appreciation of being like, okay, if I was in that seat and I, jumped down a cavern and I had, someone else had just played for 15 minutes and now I blew it in 30 seconds, I would want them to give me the same type of appreciation. So I think that there's something really important about learning that when you're younger. Also, I want to take just a quick second here to talk about a little update that's coming to JJ Meets World. So in the last 2 weeks, I have pretty much sealed the deal to start putting together 3 other podcasts.
Sweet.
And I'm really excited to start sharing those with you guys. And I might pull an episode here or there and pop it on the JJ Meets World thread. But you'll be hearing some new episodes, new content, and new content creators that we're getting involved with. And I think that that's really awesome that people are putting some trust and faith in what Tucker and I have done now for almost 250 episodes.
Right.
And I am also amazed, too, that people are asking me like, well, what are you doing for your 250th? What are you doing for your 250th? And I said, I don't know. We'll have to figure it out. and we got to figure it out quick. But I appreciate everyone who's been a listener. And, you know, we ask you this in the opening and the closing, and I know it's easy to hit the like skip 15, but hitting the subscribe button means a lot to us. Leaving a review on iTunes, on Spotify, on any of these things, especially if it's a 5-star review, those things go an awful long way. And I started doing it for the podcast that I listen to on a regular basis. And I got feedback from one of them that I was pretty impressed that they took time out of their day to send me a message thanking me for the really nice write-up that I had done for them. And so it solidified the fact that, like, yep, that was a good decision. I'm glad I made that decision. So if you've got the time, we sure would appreciate it. And don't forget, you can always go to jjmeetsworld.com to find all of these episodes in just a neat format. You can click on things like movies, and you can find episodes that we deal with where we're talking about movies at length. And so this has been quite the journey for me, and I really have enjoyed it. And I know, Tucker, you put in a ton of work into these things, and I think that it's pretty exciting that we're bordering on putting out enough content that you could listen to it while you're adrift on a cruise ship where you have to poop in a bucket.
Yeah, we'll have to like recalculate, just like we did when we got to episode, I believe, 200, which was exactly the total length of time that we'd actually basically put out on our RSS feed. Could be fun to do again.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's get it done. Tucker, this has been a fun episode. Thanks for talking about personal preferences with me, because I got a lot of them, and we barely scratched the surface. That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to help us continue to produce new episodes each week, visit jjmeetsworld.com, where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some swag at the merch shop, or follow our link to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all the sites the cool kids are using these days. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by visiting moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, check out linebenders.com, where you can find direct contact info for JJ or booking information. My personal preference when it comes to toilet is elongated and tall.